Well, nominations have been announced for the 2020 Screen Actors Guild Awards, and we are just verklempt and surprised and every other kind of emotion that you can be right now. I'm Zach Laws of Gold Derby. Joining me now are fellow Gold Derby contributors Kevin Jacobsen and Luca Giliberti. We're going to be talking about the film categories in this video. We'll talk about TV in another one. Let me start off by asking you guys this, and I'll go to you first, Kevin. I think that probably the most surprising inclusion was the final nominee of the day, the final announcement, Parasite in Best Ensemble. It's only the second foreign language film in history to get this, the first being Life is Beautiful. Do we think that this portends some positive news about its Best Picture chances?
Yes, I think it is hard to overstate how huge it is that a film that is not in the English language is able to get into SAG Ensemble. We know that SAG is a little bit iffy when it comes to any sort of film not in the English language, so that's very huge. I have to imagine this is a major, major boost to its Best Picture chances, considering, you know, how adverse they are to that, and the Oscars are even more comfortable with more of an international film. So I'm feeling even more confident now in my prediction, actually, that Song Kang-ho could sneak into Best Supporting Actor at the Oscars. So yeah, I think it's clearly a top 3 film. I think that and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and The Irishman are probably contending for that top spot there. And so, yeah, I think this could very much do what Roma and all of those other non-English language films couldn't do.
It was particularly surprising, given that none of the actors got nominated. But like you said, I think that this does boost the chances of somebody like Song Kang-ho, who had a tough road ahead of him because of the language barrier. But now with this nomination, I think it just bolsters his chances, even though he didn't get an individual nomination. Luca, let me go to you now. I mean, your reaction to this, because last year a lot of us were looking at Roma to possibly be the first foreign language film to win. It did not get nominated here anywhere. We kind of chalked that up to there being no Hollywood actors, no celebrities, but there's no celebrities in Parasite either. Yeah. So what do you think?
Yeah, first of all, what an amazing, surprising nomination. I didn't expect the cast to get in at all, and I was just very surprised to read that it got in. And I always thought its chances in Best Picture were really good. I think I have it in the top 3 at the moment, and always thought it could be a threat to actually win Best Picture, something that Roma couldn't do last year. But this absolutely bolsters its chances. And I'm just so happy that we have a non-English film or not English language film in this category. And we'll have this cast, and they'll be able to have their, moments in the spotlight, which is actually what excites me more than, it bolstering its Best Picture chances potentially. Because we just don't usually see this at SAG, especially after last year where we had, these big, huge American box office successes getting into a Best Cast. So I was just very happy to see it get nominated here.
Well, now that we got that out of the way, let's talk about some of the other surprise inclusions and exclusions that just had us kind of scratching our heads this morning. Kevin, let me start with you. Just generally speaking, I mean, what were some of the snubs or inclusions, other than Parasite, of course, that really caught your eye?
Well, I was a little bit surprised by the overperformance of Bombshell. I think, not only Charlize Theron and Margot Robbie getting in, that was expected, but Nicole Kidman as well for an individual nomination, as well as the ensemble. This is very much something that Bombshell needed. I'm a little surprised by all that love, considering I think it's more of a late-breaking film, which could sometimes hurt a film, but clearly they were just head over heels for it. I'm not sure if it will translate to Best Picture success necessarily. We've seen things like Trumbo, for example, do very well. I don't know why that's coming to mind, but
Jay Roach.
Well, yeah, there you go. That's why it's coming to mind. So Jay Roach films are very familiar for this group, but I do think it will definitely be a major player. At least Theron and Robbie are in. I do think Kidman could possibly get in at the Oscars just as a fifth in a very kind of weird supporting actress race. On the flip side, I was a little surprised to not see the Marriage Story nomination in Ensemble, because, you know, there's 3 individual nominations: Adam Driver, Scarlett Johansson, Laura Dern, but not Ensemble, especially when that ensemble is so deep of so many great actors, from Alan Alda, Julie Haggerty, Merritt Weaver, you know, all these greats, that for it to not get in there, it's not a huge deal breaker, I would say, in terms of a best picture, but I don't think it's quite, it's certainly not the best day it could have been. But obviously we've seen like The Shape of Water miss out on Ensemble despite a very strong cast there, and still go on to win best picture. But you have to imagine that it sort of lessens the possibility of that if it doesn't have the support of the actors as much for a best picture win.
Luca, what do you think?
I was also completely shocked by Bombshell's overperformance here. I mean, there were even rumors that the screeners really hadn't gotten to SAG voters on time. So I honestly took out everyone for the movie except for Charlize Theron, and drama actress, an actress. So I was completely surprised to see even Nicole Kidman get in. But I always had a feeling that if Bombshell was going to overperform here, that Nicole Kidman would get nominated. She's been nominated so many times at the SAG Awards.
I love her.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I didn't think she'd get...
Well, we'll talk about the TV side in a little bit.
Yeah. And then my favorite nomination of the entire day is Lupita Nyong'o for us. I've been rooting for her since I saw the movie back in March. I was very disappointed when she didn't get in at the Globes, but I always thought she would have a really good chance of getting in here just because they got the screeners very early, and because voters had enough time to also watch the movie since it came out early in the year. Plus, they rewarded her for 12 Years a Slave, so I knew there was some support for her here. But I'm just hoping that she's able to break into the top 5 at the Oscars, though I still think that might be a bit of an uphill climb for her, because Cynthia Erivo also got in, and she now has Critics' Choice, Golden Globes, and SAG Awards in her favor. So it's going to be very interesting fight for those 4th and 5th slots in the Best Actress race, since Saoirse Ronan got snubbed here, as did Little Women completely, which again doesn't surprise me. I predicted a complete shutout, but it's not good for the movie's chances, even though it's a late breaker as well. But it's, you know, it was one of those casts tailor-made to get a nomination here.
Well, yeah, I mean, I wanted to talk about that because you have these 2 late-breaking movies, Bombshell and Little Women, both, funny enough, with predominantly female casts. One of the, I think that they were both question marks for us, whether or not they would get the screeners in time, whether or not voters would respond to them. Clearly, they responded to Bombshell, and they did not respond to Little Women. And it should be noted, the industry as a whole has not responded to Little Women at all. It has not got into any of the guilds that have announced so far. Lost in all of the Golden Globes and SAG Shuffle. We've had the Art Directors Guild announced. It missed there. We've had the Costume Designers Guild announced. It missed there. Those are 2 places where it should have been rubber stamped on. Not to mention it missed at the Cinema Editors. It missed at the Cinema Audio Society. That's not so surprising, but still. And it has missed at the Makeup and Hairstylists Guild, another place that Bombshell did well. So is this, the movie hasn't even opened yet, so I know that I'm the only one here who's seen it so far, but does this kind of spell doom for that film's chances at the Academy? What do you guys think?
I think it probably is just not going to happen. I mean, I think adapted screenplay is still on the table for Greta Gerwig. She's very loved, and she does something different with the story of Little Women. So I think perhaps writers will appreciate that. But on the whole, I just feel like, you know, people can keep making excuses about it's happening too late or any sort of things. We got some intel that the Golden Globes maybe loved it, but clearly they didn't love it that much. There's just not a lot of evidence to support this film at the moment. And there are so many films that are in that sort of 7 through 10 to 11 slot that are just doing a lot better. I mean, we have Ford v Ferrari, for example.
Yeah.
Christian Bale getting in here is pretty huge, I would argue, especially over Robert De Niro or Eddie Murphy even. And so I just think it's going to get crowded out, and it's possible that people just aren't really that excited about a new story of Little Women. I mean, A Star is Born certainly did very well for itself last year, but I think there might be a similar feeling of, do we really need another remake of this? That sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, it really upsets me that Little Women is getting, well, not shut out everywhere, but that it's underperforming everywhere because, you know, after those got 9 Critics' Choice Award nominations and then, you know, has 91 on Metacritic and a high Rotten Tomatoes score, I thought for sure that the movie was going to perform well. But it really hasn't had a good week at all. I mean, Zach, as you said, it's been missing at Guilds where it should have been, you know, a lock for a nomination. So those are not good signs for its Oscar prospects. Even though I do think, and I said this on Monday when we were talking about the Globes, is that the Globes, SAG Awards, and Oscars will be so vastly different from one another that I don't even know if we can use these, you know, entirely as our, you know, reasons to predict Little Women or not to predict Little Women. I would need to see a few more guilds chime in, but I will be moving it probably to my 9th or 10th slot in Best Picture. And eventually I might even take it out, you know, depending on what happens after today still.
Yeah, I mean, as the person who has seen Little Women on this panel, I would say it's not that surprising to me that it's doing so poorly. Just keeping personal feelings out of it. Let's. You talked about Christian Bale, Kevin, and I do want to talk about that Best Actor category because it is wild. I mean, Robert De Niro is snubbed. Second time this week. I think you can maybe chalk that up to they're giving him a Lifetime Achievement Award, and they figured it was a waste of a bid. But he is vulnerable. I still have him in my Oscar predictions just because I think The Irishman will do well overall, but we'll see. Eddie Murphy missed. He really needed
Yeah.
Yeah.
Antonio Banderas missed after getting in at the Globes and winning New York and LA and obviously Cannes as well. Do we think that maybe of these 5 nominees who got in, Christian Bale, Taron Egerton being the most surprising ones, are they going to translate over to Oscars? It seems like there's only like 2 locks in this category, one being Adam Driver, the other being Joaquin Phoenix, and then I think Leo is pretty safe at this point.
Yeah.
What do you guys think?
Yeah,
I would definitely agree with that. I think the Banderas miss wasn't really something that I found too shocking, especially like I was going back to, like, they don't love subtitled films on the whole. So that's just a film that I felt like was going to be more of the big critic passionate pick. And the fact that it even got into Golden Globes for him is a huge boost. And I think he will definitely get enough passion for that. I'm quite excited to see Taron Egerton doing so well. I think he was someone that people thought early on that we have to put him in the 5, and then more people started showing up, and suddenly he was going down to 7th or 8th or 9th in that lineup, but he keeps showing up almost everywhere, and I think he's campaigning very hard. I think a lot of the people in this lineup are a little bit allergic to campaigning, I guess you could say, and so I think that will help him, the handshaking and the events that he's doing, and Rocket Man is Paramount's only pony this year, so I think all of those things will really help him. He's playing a real person. I actually do have him in my Oscar lineup. I have Christian Bale just missing out, and I do think Robert De Niro has a chance still, just because the film is clearly going to be a top 3 contender, and we've had cases of even last year, Yalitza Aparicio missing a bunch of things and still getting in at the Oscars. Same thing with Clint Eastwood for $1 Million Baby back in the day. So if you're in a top 3 film, I think you can never be fully discounted, even though I sort of in some ways understand why some of these groups aren't going for Robert De Niro, because I think it's such a reactive and subtle performance through a lot of it, especially like in reaction to Al Pacino. It's hard not to be seen as less subtle than that, but I think it's still a very tight race that is still not really that clear, quite honestly. After all of this.
I mean, I mean, what an interesting category this has really been, because I think Taron Egerton really, really, really needed this. I think we all expected him to get in at the Globes in the comedy category, but I think SAG was a big, question mark, but I'm very happy that he got in, and I think he'll get in at BAFTA as well, and that will further help him with his Oscar chances. I don't have him in yet, but I think I'm going to put him in after this video. Eddie Murphy really, really needed this nomination. There was no excuse for him to miss, considering that Dolomite Is My Name is a Netflix movie and SAG loves Netflix. And they've also had enough time to watch it. So I didn't expect him to miss here, to be honest. Like Kevin, I'm not worried about Antonio Banderas, because I don't think Pain and Glory was ever going to really do well with SAG voters, especially with all these other bigger movies in contention. So I'm not worried about him. And I do still have Robert De Niro in my Oscar predictions, because as Kevin said, The Irishman will be one of the top contenders, and that I think that'll help him get into the Best Actor lineup. And I also do not have Christian Bale at the moment getting in. These two nominations were very surprising to me, because I didn't really think the movie would do all that well in the acting categories, but he's a possibility. So he'll probably be fighting for that last slot as well.
Well, let me say this about Christian Bale. Christian Bale, like Taron Egerton, is probably going to get it at BAFTA for obvious reasons. I think this is the first time in a long time he's actually played someone of British nationality. So how can they resist that? And he has surprised us in the past with these Oscar nominations. Don't forget, the year of American Hustle, where he only got in at the Globes, didn't really get in anywhere else, and then all of a sudden shows up in Best Actor over Tom Hanks, and some other people who were more widely expected to get in. Egerton is still a question mark for me. It didn't surprise me that he got in at SAG because of the fact that the movie had already been out, and the fact that he has been campaigning, and the fact that all these other things. It's flashy. It's it's already on Blu-ray and DVD and all that stuff. I'm not sold entirely on his chances at getting into the 5 because of how many of the Best Picture nominees are going to have Best Actor contenders, and so I feel like he's still got kind of an uphill battle, but I wouldn't count him out, and I wouldn't count out Christian Bale. This is going to be a really hard category to call right up to the very end. Let's go over to lead actress. There weren't, you mentioned Lupita. That wasn't a huge surprise to me, because I was predicting her to get in for the same reasons that I was predicting Egerton. I think that this does really help boost her Oscar chances. Renee, Charlize, Scarlett, I think those are our top 3. Cynthia is still a question mark. Cynthia Erivo for Harriet. Again, it could be that movie's only nomination. And we've seen a lot of instances where people like Daniel Bruhl from Rush, for instance, Timothée Chalamet for Beautiful Boy, they don't really go for performances these days where it's the sole nomination. Is there anybody who surprised you being left off or being included?
Well, first of all, to what you just said, where it's the one of them being the sole nomination for their movie, we actually have Renee Zellweger probably being the sole nomination for her movie, Cynthia Erivo and Lupita Nyong'o. So if all 3 were to get in, so I think that makes it very interesting. And as to a surprising omission, I wasn't surprised that Saoirse Ronan was left off, because I just didn't think Little Women was going to get nominated anywhere, because I don't think enough people saw it, to be honest. Even if people saw Bombshell, I had just heard that Little Women screeners hadn't gone out yet, or hadn't properly gone out. And except for that, I wasn't shocked to see Awkwafina miss. I wasn't shocked to see Alfre Woodard miss. I just didn't see those nominations happening. And it's very sad for Awkwafina, because I think that's also a nomination she would have really needed. I wouldn't say she's out of the question for the Oscar nomination, but I don't think she's as strong as Cynthia Erivo and Lupita Nyong'o at the moment.
Yeah, just to add on to that, I think that is definitely something she really needed, and the fact that she didn't is not a great sign. And even if she wins the Golden Globe, I just feel like there's going to be more dramatic performances, people that are really campaigning, like Cynthia Erivo, for example, people who are very passionate about Lupita Nyong'o, and possibly some late-breaking love for Saoirse Ronan, who is a bit of an Academy favorite. But I was actually proud to say that I did predict this 5 lineup. So
yeah,
this is one of those categories that was really like a hair tugging out, trying to figure out the configuration of what would get in here. But I think it's important to note that even with some of those things like Daniel Bruhl and Timothy Chalamet, those were more supporting. I think it happens a little more often with lead performances here, where even like Jennifer Lawrence and Joy, for example, like people didn't really expect that to necessarily happen, just because it felt like all of the air had deflated from Joy by the end of that awards season, but she still got in anyway. I sort of think Cynthia Erivo's in the same position, just because that's a very Beatty performance, and even if you haven't seen the movie, I think people would still be kind of compelled to go for it anyway. I
will say, I mean, looking at this lineup, this does look like a 5. Saoirse Ronan, I think, might be the only person who could possibly get in at the last minute, just because, like you say, she is such an Academy favorite. 3 nominations before she was even old enough to 25. Drink. I think that Alfre Woodard, it breaks my heart. I think she's done. And I think Awkwafina, missing this and the Independent Spirit Awards, it's really hurting her chances. And that's a shame, because she would have made history with a Best Actress nomination. And she deservingly so. I mean, the performance is great, but the farewell just tanked overall here. I mean, no nomination for Ensemble, no nomination for Sao Ju Zhen, which we can talk about now. Let's go over to supporting actress. Nicole Kidman getting in for Bombshell, alongside her co-star Margot Robbie. I think Margot Robbie has pretty much cemented that Bombshell is the movie that she's going to be recognized for. I think that there was I'll admit I was wrong. I thought that maybe because Once Upon a Time in Hollywood was going to, lead nominations, it would have been her getting in for that movie instead of the one that was late breaking. But I think this, combined with the Globes and Critics' Choice as well, she's not going to have to worry about splitting the vote with herself anymore. What do you guys think of this category? Is other than Nicole Kidman, I mean, I think that Laura Dern, Jennifer Lopez, Margot Robbie, and maybe Scarlett Johansson seem safe. What do you guys think?
Well, I would say that Laura Dern and Margot Robbie are definitely safe, because Laura Dern's obviously Marriage Story, and Marriage Story will perform well, and she's gotten in everywhere. She's almost swept the Critics' Awards, so I think she's an absolute lock. Margot Robbie has gotten everywhere she needed to for Bombshell, and you know what, Zach? I also had her in for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood here, just because I thought I knew that movie was going to get a lot of nominations, and I didn't think Bombshell would actually get as many nominations as it did, so I had her in for Once instead of Bombshell. But I think she's a lock now for the Oscar nomination. I really want Jennifer Lopez to be a lock, but something about that, about the movie not getting traction in other categories worries me a bit, even though given, how this category has been at these different award shows, I think she's, becoming more of a lock with each passing day because of those last 2 slots that have gone to so many different people. I think those are the interesting ones. And at the moment, I'm not quite sure who to put into those slots. It can be anyone. It can be Kidman. It can be Kathy Bates for Richard Jewell. It can be Scarlett Johansson for Jojo Rabbit. It can be Annette Bening for The Report. There's so many different possibilities here, and I really don't know what to do.
And speaking to Scarlett Johansson, a nice rebound for Jojo Rabbit overall. I will just say, after the Golden Globes, felt like a bit of an underperformance, and for it to get not only Scarlett Johansson but Best Ensemble as well is a big boost for that film. So it's not quite out of the race yet. And I do think Scarlett Johansson is well on her way to becoming a double nominee after 0 nominations through her career, and I think that's pretty extraordinary. And I do think if Richard Jewell, Kathy Bates was submitted correctly, I would guess that she might have gotten in here, maybe in place of Nicole Kidman. So I think she is definitely someone to very much watch out for, especially as Richard Jewell is just opening up and Oscar voters are starting to see that performance. It might be one of the last ones they see, that sort of thing. But yes, also Jennifer Lopez, I was actually a little bit worried, even though she should have been like a clear lock for this. I was almost like, I don't know, is this just an internet thing, or is this real? And it's nice to see that it is real. I am very much pulling for her, even if she is the sole nomination from Hustlers. I just think, no offense to like the rest of the field, but I just don't know if there's that much passion behind a lot of other people. So I can say pretty safely that she should definitely be in at the Oscars. It's just, I don't know if a win is possible, considering Laura Dern is winning all these critics' prizes, that I actually expected to go to Jennifer Lopez as more of a cool pick, quote unquote.
Well, it's crazy too, because the only 3 people who have gotten in at all the different groups are Laura Dern, Margot Robbie, and Jennifer Lopez. After that, it's just like Annette Bening gets in at Globes but misses here and at Critics' Choice. Florence Pugh gets in at Critics' Choice and misses everywhere else. Kathy Bates gets in at Globes and misses here. It's just like Nicole Kidman. It's the first time we've heard from her. The reason I think maybe Scarlett might be a little safer is just because of that Critics' Choice nomination, number 1, bolstered by the fact that, JoJo has been doing well with the industry overall. All those organizations that I mentioned passing over Little Women have been going for JoJo, with the Audio Society being the exception, and maybe hair and makeup. I'm not sure off the top of my head.
Yeah.
But, again, like SAG Ensemble nomination, Costume Designers Guild, Art Directors Guild, Ace Eddies. I think that maybe I'm not expecting a huge nomination haul for it, but I'm expecting a decent nomination haul for it just because of all those crap categories. And I think that Scarlett, just from the fact that this category is so all over the place, could, like you said, Kevin, be heading towards a double nomination. I'll say for the record, I have in my predicted lineup right now all 5 of the SAG nominees, just because I don't know what to do with it. I don't know what to do with it.
Yeah. Exactly.
Moving on to the supporting actor lineup, you guys. It seems like, again, we have a 4. We've got the 2 Irishman guys, Pesci and Pacino. We've got Brad Pitt for Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and we've got, and I can't believe I'm going to say this, I think Tom Hanks is going to get nominated again.
Oh wow!
For the first time in almost 20 years. I think he's heading for it. That 5th slot, though, we've seen it. It went to Jamie Foxx. What did you guys think? Was that a surprise? Luca, you were predicting that, weren't you?
Yeah. Well, I decided to take him out yesterday, last minute.
Oh, well,
I know. I was so disappointed.
Credit goes to you for that.
But yeah, I had him in for like a month, and then yesterday I put in Anthony Hopkins because he was getting in everywhere. So I thought, with The Two Popes is a Netflix movie, so of course I'm going to put him in now. And but Jamie Foxx is such a typical SAG nominee, which is why I had him in the first place. I don't think he's getting into the Oscar 5. I don't even think he's a threat to get in. I think, as you said, I think those first 4 are pretty safe. So I'm never going to feel confident about Tom Hanks. Never. I'm hoping for him that he finally gets in after not getting in for so long. But otherwise, that 5th slot is so difficult to predict. I think at the moment, I will probably have Anthony Hopkins in there, just because I think The Two Popes will still have a lot of respect within the Academy. but I could see it going to so many different people. I could even, as Kevin said before, I could see it going to Song Kang-ho for Parasite, especially after it getting this SAG nomination now. And that would actually be such a typical Oscar nomination, for someone who just misses everywhere else and then gets in there, like Marina de Tavira last year for Roma. So that's something I might consider.
Yes, and I'm very, very excited to see Tom Hanks as a possibility here. Even if it's supporting, I still think it's one of the best performances of the year and one of the best performances he has given in this century. So I'm very excited for that. But again, we'll never feel totally safe predicting him ever at this point until it happens again. But yeah, Anthony Hopkins missing here was definitely a surprise for me because of SAG's traditional love for Netflix and love for him as well. I think he also got in for King Lear, very recently. Mm-hmm. So that was definitely a surprise. And I just feel like the Two Popes thing just keeps going back and forth for me. Like, is this going to be a thing? Is it not? Or is it just going to get like one random nomination at the Oscars for adapted screenplay? Like, I don't know how this is going to figure out here, but I'm almost curious whether Brad Pitt is just going to sort of sail through award season, or if one of these other guys could take it, one of the Irishmen.
Yeah,
I don't know if any of you had thoughts on that.
I think that it's between Brad Pitt and Joe Pesci, if I had to narrow it down right now. I'll say that I think that Pesci is in they're both going to get in, him and Pacino, and I think that's going to hurt both their chances of winning, because you have these people who are like, I'm a Pesci person, I'm a Pacino person. Credit to the movie for having such rich supporting characters. The absence, I had Willem Dafoe in my fifth slot. I figured this would be like his last stand, basically. And I kind of feel like maybe he's going to miss this year. Which, I mean, the poor guy, it's like you're going to nominate him for like a fifth time and not give it to him. He'd be in like Amy Adams territory. I think that these four guys look safe. I'm going with Song Kang-ho for my fifth slot at the Oscars because, like you, Kevin, I can't figure out this Two Popes thing. I mean, it overperforms at the Golden Globes, and then this movie is all about two actors. I can't believe that neither of them got in. Like, you know. But I think that those four guys are safe. I think that Jamie Foxx, I mean, I wouldn't. He's definitely in the running for this, but every year there's sort of that kind of like Steve Carell in Battle of the Sexes nomination, like the respected actor gets a showy supporting turn, and this is like the one place that they show up all season long, and I think that might be what Jamie Foxx is going for here. I should note our fellow Gold Derby contributor Riley Chow couldn't be here today. He wanted to make sure that I let all of you at home know that he overcame his Irishman bias last night to put in both Al Pacino and Joe Pesci in supporting actor, but he did so by taking out Tom Hanks and Jamie Foxx. So you win some, you lose some. I do want to say one thing about the stunt category real quick, and that is this. I'm really surprised that 1917 didn't get in here.
Yeah, that's bad.
I never expected it to be a contender for acting or ensemble, but I thought that this is the one place that movie should show up. And combined, it's missed the Cinema Audio Society for sound mixing, which is shocking. It missed the Film Editors Guild, which not so shocking, but still. What is the deal with this movie?
Oh, geez.
That's a very good question. It's another one of those that keeps going back and forth, where I feel like it has Globe support and it's kind of weirdly underperforming with guilds, and it makes me wonder if they've seen it. You know, I don't know if it plays differently on a screener compared to with a big screen.
Probably,
yeah. So the stunt ensemble award here was a little odd to me. I mean, Zach, I know you're a huge Irishman fan, but I'm a little suspicious of how that got in there, to be honest. I don't really know what the stunts were that were super nomination worthy, but fine. A little bit same with Joker. I know there's a few action sequences in there, but I think either way that shows big support for both of those, and that the fact that Joker got in there is probably another big boost for its Best Picture chances. Same with Ford v Ferrari and Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. I think it's very weird what is happening with 1917. I almost feel like it just hasn't had enough time to build up goodwill, because I feel like the first screen, it was screened for the first people, and then all of a sudden we were getting Globe nominations. I feel like there was no time in between for people to, properly talk about the movie. So I think that might be a reason why maybe not enough people saw it indeed. But I'm curious to see how it affects its Oscar chances. I think it'll still do well in the tech categories. I still think it's in Best Picture, and I think Sam Mendes is still getting into the director lineup. Though I don't feel as confident about it as I did a few weeks ago when the first reactions came out, which is strange because I thought it would be a movie that would do well everywhere. So I'm a bit surprised, even though I don't think this really, really hurts it, to be honest.
Well, we shall certainly see. Before we go, rapid fire, what are your guys' SAG Ensemble predictions? Kevin, Ensemble.
Yeah. Well, I'm going with Parasite. Yeah. I think even with, the fact that it didn't get any individual nominations, I think that is such a clear ensemble, and there's such clear support for that film that it'll do just like what Black Panther did last year, which didn't get any individual nominations. So I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is very, very close, and I might switch back and forth between those, but something in my gut tells me that it's just going to go to Parasite at the end of the night, and we're all going to be very excited. Fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Luca.
I mean, I'm just going with the safe choice at the moment. I'm going with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. It's a cast full of A-list Hollywood actors that everyone loves. And I think Once Upon a Time in Hollywood has been doing so well everywhere. It really hasn't missed anything. So I just have it in that first spot. And I think Parasite is absolutely a threat, as is probably The Irishman. But I wouldn't be surprised to see any of those three win. And I probably need a tiny bit time, to look at these races and to see which movie makes most sense. But we know they love huge casts. They love huge casts with a bunch of actors that everyone loves and knows. So I think this will probably go to Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
I'm with you. I'm going with Once Upon a Time in Hollywood because it's got every member of SAG-AFTRA in the cast.
Yeah.
But Kevin, I do agree. I think that Parasite is the spoiler here. And when I looked at the ensemble nominees, I was really tempted to put it in there. And I just might, depending on how Oscar nominations go, because this will be, of course, after all of that. But what matters most is what you guys think is going to win. So make sure you hurry on to Gold Derby right now and make your predictions and see if you are smarter than us. Kevin, Luca, thank you so much. We are now going to talk about television.